The Kindle is one of the few pieces of modern technology that could remain perfectly useful for 10 years or more, recent issues affecting older devices notwithstanding. It doesn't need a dramatically faster processor to display a novel, it doesn't need more RAM to turn a page, and while Amazon will probably continue adding new features, the basic job of a Kindle hasn't fundamentally changed since the first one was released. But one part of every Kindle that is more or less guaranteed to deteriorate before any other component: the battery. And when that happens, a device that's otherwise still perfectly usable, you might find pretty difficult to repair. But that could change because new EU rules are due to come into force next year. And something recently discovered inside Amazon's own Kindle software suggests the company may already be preparing for a future in which Kindle owners can replace the battery themselves. Welcome to the Weekly Spark, where each week I take one story, one question, or even one small irritation from the world of technology and think a little bit more deeply about it. And this week we're talking about the one part of your Kindle that has always had an expiry date: its battery. Now, this story initially caught my attention because of smartwatches. The European Commission has just added 6 new categories of product to a list of exemptions from its forthcoming replaceable battery requirements. And those exemptions include wearable devices such as smartwatches and fitness trackers. It means manufacturers might not have to design those products so that ordinary consumers can replace the batteries themselves. Instead, the battery might only need to be replaceable by an independent professional. But the more interesting part of the story isn't really the exemption, it's the much wider rule that those products are being exempted from. From the 18th of February next year, 2027, products containing portable batteries and placed on the European market will generally have to be designed so that the battery can be removed and be replaced by the end user. And by end user, the European Commission doesn't mean somebody with professional repair qualifications. Its own guidance describes an ordinary adult without any specific experience or qualifications relating to battery replacement. The battery must be accessible using commercially available tools. Manufacturers generally won't be allowed to require proprietary tools, heat or solvents just to get inside the device. They will also have to provide instructions explaining how to remove and replace the battery. Replacement batteries must remain available at what the regulation calls a reasonable and non-discriminatory price for at least 5 years after the final unit of that particular product model has been placed on the market. And software mustn't be used to prevent a compatible replacement battery from working properly. Here's looking at you, Apple. Anyway, this is much more significant than simply saying manufacturers should make their gadgets slightly easier to repair. It means the ability to replace the battery has to become part of the design of the product from the beginning. And at the moment, e-readers such as the Kindle are not included among the newly announced exemptions. That brings us to something discovered a couple of months ago inside Kindle firmware version 5.19.4. People examining the software found several pieces of text that don't appear to make much sense for existing Kindles. One message warns that an installed battery can't be recognized and that charging has been limited to protect the device. Another recommends fitting a battery that complies with Amazon's specifications. There's also a reference to a new battery section within the Kindle's settings and, most interestingly, an instruction that says, "Scan the QR code below to purchase a battery replacement kit and view instructions for replacement." Amazon hasn't announced a battery replacement program, and these messages don't prove that the next Kindle will have a user replaceable battery. Software often contains references to unfinished features, abandoned ideas, and products that will never see the light of day. The messages could also be intended for Amazon's own technicians rather than ordinary owners. But when Kindle software suddenly starts referring to battery replacement kits, just as regulation requiring replaceable batteries approaches, it's difficult to dismiss the timing as a complete coincidence. It's worth making an important distinction here. The battery in most current Kindles aren't physically impossible to replace. People do replace Kindle batteries and repair guides exist, but there's a substantial difference between something being technically replaceable and something being designed to be replaced by its owner. An iFixit guide shows that you have to insert opening tools around the edge of the device, release the clips holding the casing together, disconnect the battery connector, and then prise the battery away from the adhesive fixing it to the inside of the Kindle. You've got to be careful not to damage the connector surrounding the components or the battery itself. The guide also says that new adhesive may be required when putting everything back together. Now, compared with dismantling some smartphones, that isn't necessarily the most nightmarish repair ever devised, but it still isn't something Amazon expects the average Kindle owner to do. Amazon doesn't currently sell you an official battery replacement kit, walk you through the process, and then reassure you that your Kindle's waterproofing will remain intact afterwards. The current design treats battery replacement as a repair carried out when something has gone wrong and you send it back for replacement while they refurbish your broken device. The new regulation treats it as routine maintenance that manufacturers should anticipate from the outset. I would argue that a replacement battery makes more sense in a Kindle than it does in a lot of other modern gadgets. Smartphones eventually struggle with new applications, operating systems, and more demanding software. Computers can reach the point where their processors, memory, or storage are no longer sufficient. And even smartwatches can become limited when health sensors, wireless standards, and software features move on. But a Kindle primarily needs to simply display text on an e-ink screen. A 10-year-old Kindle may be slower than a new one. It might have a lower resolution display, an older charging port, and fewer features, but it can still display a book. In fact, plenty of people continue using very old Kindles precisely because the basic reading experience hasn't changed enough to make replacing them essential. The battery is different. Rechargeable batteries chemically age whether or not the rest of the device becomes obsolete. Eventually they hold less charge, become unreliable, or just fail completely. That means the Kindle's least durable component can determine the lifespan of the entire product. And the frustrating part is that this isn't an unexpected fault. Amazon knows when it manufactures a Kindle that the battery won't last forever. Yet the product has traditionally been designed as though replacing it is an unusual intervention rather than a predictable part of ownership. The most obvious argument against making Kindle batteries more accessible is waterproofing. The Kindle Paperwhite and Kindle Colorsoft are designed to survive accidental immersion in water. Opening the casing will disturb the seals and compromise that protection. There are also some genuine safety concerns. Lithium-ion batteries can be dangerous if they're punctured, bent, incorrectly installed, or just poorly manufactured. I'm sure Amazon really doesn't want Kindle owners attacking the inside of their device with a kitchen knife after ordering the cheapest replacement battery they can find on the internet. But the regulation doesn't require Amazon to put a flimsy plastic battery door on the back of the Kindle either, like some kind of 2000s Nokia phone. A replacement battery could still sit behind screws, clips, seals, and a properly engineered gasket. Amazon could sell a complete kit containing the correct tools, replacement seals, and clear instructions. It could even make the device slightly thicker if that were genuinely necessary. I appreciate the technology industry appears to consider an additional millimetre of thickness the tech equivalent of a humanitarian crisis, but I suspect most Kindle owners would survive. The regulation already includes an exemption for appliances specifically designed to operate primarily in wet environments and intended to be washable or rinsable. But that sounds far more like an electric toothbrush or water flosser than a Kindle Paperwhite. A Kindle being able to survive falling in the bath is not the same as being designed to primarily operate in the bath, regardless of how committed you are to finishing that final chapter. There's an interesting detail inside those leaked Kindle messages that I briefly touched upon earlier. The software appears to warn users when a battery isn't recognised and may limit charging to protect the device. There may be legitimate safety reasons for that. Amazon won't want unsuitable batteries overheating, damaging Kindles or causing fires. But it also raises an important question. Will Amazon allow properly manufactured compatible third-party batteries, or will it try to restrict owners to official Amazon replacements? The European regulation specifically says that software must not be used to impede the replacement of a portable battery with another compatible battery. The argument will presumably come down to what Amazon considers compatible and what the regulators consider compatible. That may sound like a minor technical argument, but it could determine whether battery replacement is genuinely affordable or simply another tightly controlled repair program. A compatible kit costing, say, 30 quid could keep an old Kindle working for several more years. An official repair costing so much that buying a discounted new Kindle makes more sense would technically offer repairability while defeating much of the point. The European regulation applies directly within the European Union and in Northern Ireland under the Windsor framework, and it doesn't currently apply in the same way across England, Scotland and Wales. However, the UK government has said it intends to consult in the autumn on an aligned regime covering the entire United Kingdom. Even without that alignment, Amazon might not want to manufacture one easily repairable Kindle for Europe and another sealed version for everywhere else. Maintaining a single hardware design would probably be simpler, although that is ultimately a commercial decision for Amazon rather than something the European regulation guarantees. It's entirely possible that a rule created in Brussels could result in more repairable Kindles being sold everywhere, including here in the UK, a la USB-C in iPhones. Regulation can create unintended consequences. It can increase manufacturing costs, complicate product designs, and occasionally demand solutions that sound simpler on paper than they are in reality. There will undoubtedly be products where allowing an untrained owner to replace a battery creates legitimate safety concerns, and that's why the exemptions exist. But there's also a clear reason manufacturers moved away from replaceable batteries in the first place. Sealed products can be thinner and easier to waterproof. They also encourage owners to replace the entire device when one relatively inexpensive component wears out. And this is where regulation can sometimes correct an incentive that the market is unlikely to correct by itself. Amazon benefits when I buy a new Kindle. Amazon won't potentially benefit nearly as much when I replace the battery in my existing Kindle and keep it for another 5 years. But I would. Kindles are unusual because many owners don't feel compelled to replace them constantly. A Kindle isn't usually a status symbol. Nobody's walking into a coffee shop hoping strangers notice that they've upgraded to this year's slightly faster page turn. People tend to keep them until they break, get lost, or become noticeably inconvenient to use. That makes the ability to replace the battery much more than a token repair feature. It could substantially change how long a Kindle remains useful, depending of course on how long Amazon supports the Kindle for, but that is the subject of an earlier video that I made. We still don't know what Amazon is actually planning. The messages found inside the Kindle software are suggestive, but they're not an announcement. We don't know which models might change, how complicated the repair will be, how much the batteries will cost, or whether waterproofing will survive the process. For years, we've accepted that when a battery inside a sealed gadget wears out, the sensible answer is often to replace the entire product. Perhaps that assumption is finally beginning to change. And considering how long a Kindle can remain useful, I struggle to think of many products where that change would make more sense. Would you be comfortable replacing the battery in your own Kindle, or would you still rather pay Amazon or an independent repair shop to do it? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by Christmas this year, so I really do need your help. And if you'd like to support the channel a little further, then please consider buying me a digital coffee by scanning the QR code over here, or use the link in the description. Thanks for watching or listening. I'm Mark from the Weekly Spark, and I'll see you in the next one.